Have you ever thought that technology can actually unite us? We're here talking through a phone, through the internet, but we do believe that technology can have a positive impact, and instead of creating problems, taking jobs away, or killing, could be the solution to solving our major problems. And technology in this case is the communication as well. And why is it a company that works with innovation and new technologies is going to be talking about Israel? Because it doesn't really matter how good we live or how good everything we have today in the world if that conflict is not resolved. And that is that subject is very dear to my heart. Since I was a kid, I always looked at the unsolvable conflict. I'm an economist by trade, political scientist, and I also always work with technology. I truly believe that this same tool that is being used to disconnect us, to make us turn back into tribes, can be the solution. I don't believe we need to censor speech. I believe we need to put more truth to speech. There's no question there have been many lies perpetrated. So if you only see this video, and I've done a couple more about Israel, and I'm going to be doing, because it's much bigger than Israel. This is the conflict that has been going on for thousands of years. This is actually a conflict of the spirit of Cain. So I'm an economist. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a priest. I'm a Christian. And to be honest with you, until very recently, I was not really paying attention to scripture. So I believed in science. I believed in a lot of things. Even when we start deviating from real science. But clearly there's some lessons in the corpus. And I've traveled the world, and you can see a lot of people that in fact talk the same thing. So we have a responsibility. This is an old conflict, and it is time for us either to give up or to actually take a look at this in a different way. So I'm going to be organizing my thoughts in a series of videos. But I honestly don't want to be seeing this kind
country who frankly don't share our values and would quite like us to be another country altogether. I'm reminded of a possible
This is complicated. This is not what we should be looking at. Look at all this news. So it's all about a lot of death, So why can we spend so much money to save one life here next to your house, in your city? And both sides have their claim, but there's a one moral side to take. And I have a very different opinion about the conflict. We can love the Arabs, the Palestinians, all the terrorists I'm talking about. We can love them. I'm speaking as a Christian. But we can definitely disagree with what they're doing. And honestly, okay, let's really think about why is it that everyone, it's so interesting. This is not just about Israel. If If in fact God promised to Jacob and essentially to Abraham, and Ishmael is his son as well, I believe, and I know there's disagreement, but I believe the father figure, the God as a father, promised that land. And when I say that land, we're talking about Israel. So I believe, honestly, that we have to defend two things: the idea behind Israel and the idea behind America. And I will explain what I mean by that. Israel, it's the promised land by the children of God that have been promised prosperity, and that's the promised land. Any father would have the promise to all his children. And I know I'm taking this leap of faith into scripture, but it all makes sense. We Christians have the final piece of the puzzle. You know, this conflict is the simple thing to solve, but it's not easy. It's not easy because both sides are the eye for an eye. What Jesus taught us, and again, is so profound, is the most powerful weapon in the whole universe. It's love. And I totally understand the hate on both sides. I've actually was able to watch some of the pictures and the videos of October the 7th. It's completely devastating. But we, as the people of the world, have to look into it, because for some reason we need to see that. And some people have called the Arabs, the Hamas, animals. Honestly, I've never seen animals do that. But it doesn't help. Calling anyone animal doesn't help. And to be honest with you, all of you, I do believe this is our problem. And I also believe that God is really behind this. He promised to Isaac and to Ishmael. And we believe that that promise has extended to Christians. So I'll give you an alternative. The alternative is we all try to solve our differences. And when by doing that, we have to find a formula. And love is the only formula. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's not. Because cheesy things are easy to do. To love your enemy is the hardest thing. I flew from Florida to Brazil, literally on October the 7th. I saw the images later, but on that day, on the next day, it was my wife's birthday. She was pregnant. And I had seen the pictures of babies or killed, and just the beginning, this was like Monday or Tuesday. On Tuesday morning, my wife lost her baby. And I'm a young father, first time. So it would be our second baby. She was 3 months old, pregnant. And on that moment, I realized how tough for those people in both sides and what was happening to them. And honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was to thank God that I wasn't there. To thank God that I was actually washing the blood of my unborn child and I wasn't really carrying his body or her body. And that moment hit me that all that I've done in research and looking at history, and I went to a Jewish school. What a crazy thing, a Brazilian Catholic. I went to Brandeis, and what I've learned there, I almost got married to a Jew, an Orthodox Jew, so I had to go and study and everything. So we do have a lot to learn with Jews. The whole debate about victimizing ourselves, or whatever, you're black, or whatever happened to you. Anti-Semitism is real. Recently, I actually apologized to my friends, a lot of Jewish friends. I didn't believe, because I could only see the world through my own eyes, and I couldn't hate them. They're friends. But when we say we have to learn, it's like we all, Arabs, Muslim, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, everyone. We all have to learn with each other. And that's what I differ from some people. I don't believe anyone has the full truth. What I do believe, if I were to think as a father, I would want all my children, and both Jews and Muslims, believe we are children of God, and so do we, Christians. So if we believe we are children of God, it makes no sense that the promise is just to one child. I would have done that to my kids. I hope that I'm going to have a second, third, who knows. So that's really profound. Because honestly, if we look at this area of the map, this is a very, very prosperous part of the world. Jews are a minority of the world population. Nonetheless, they control a lot of the wealth. And that actually is not a bad thing, because they fulfill their promise, God's promise. We can have a lot of disagreements as far as some of the eye for an eye, but this is something we are all learning. We haven't been able to use love. But from the perspective of the future, of mankind, of humankind, we have to take a good look at ourselves. Really, what we're doing right now around the world. And honestly, what is this about? Wars, inflation, all of this. You know, it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that. So this shouldn't be the reality in 2023. We should be celebrating all the achievements, stuff that we did. But I want to ask you, how can we solve this? And I've been following a lot of people. And honestly, I liked a lot the work that Piers Morgan is doing. And that's what I'm talking about now. I want to show a few videos, and I just want all of us to think with each other, to think together, to brainstorm this solution. And whatever solution we will have, whatever solution we will have,
Savagery
is not going to come.
Check. You'll have your
It's
turn.
not
Just
gonna
show some
come like
pieces.
this.
You're not going to show it.
It's not going to be.
Our dying saints as a
It's not gonna be this.
That blood.
You know, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be this so bizarre infighting. We're not going to do this. Look, people taking out.
This narrative
and
to keep subconsciously
what is this narrative? You know, why wouldn't we want hostages to be released? But there's some hope.
very powerful address that you made there.
I want you to listen to this.
I am a Jew. Those have been the words of the Jewish people for 3 millennia. Those were the words of the men, women, and children of Masada. Those were the words of the followers of Bar Kokhba. Those were the words of Jews in Granada in 1066, and the Rhineland in 1096, and Khmelnytsky from 1648 to 1657, and Kishinev in 1903, and Hebron in 1929. Those were the words of Jews in Auschwitz and Treblinka. Those were the last words of Daniel Pearl. And those are my words too. They're the words of my parents, the words of my wife, my children. Over the weekend, my people, the Jewish people, were attacked, murdered, mutilated, our women were raped, our children were kidnapped. This has happened millions of times before to millions of Jews across history. Jew hatred exists because evil exists, because there are people who have, for literally all of human history, hated the Jews and sought to strike at them while they are weak, who have blamed the Jews for their own problems, who have crafted complex conspiracy theories about the supposed power of the Jews, who have sought to destroy, to murder, to mutilate, to rape the Jews, from Pharaoh to Haman, from Hitler to Hamas.
What reaction have you had to that, Ben?
I think the reaction has been pretty strong and overwhelmingly positive. I think there are a lot of people, not only...
I know that some people may find Ben Shapiro controversial. I believe he has sound arguments, and we need to take this with a perspective that I believe I've tried. This is a very old wound. I'll tell you, Ben, and to all my friends that I've contacted you personally, you know, I didn't believe. I thought we were far away from that time. And I understand that never forget. I've been to concentration camps. It's a very heavy energy. But all lives matter. And we as a world, as a society, we need to really have the same care. And Israel is trying to have peace, and there has been ways. And it's a complicated process because we need to have a stop. Because if that argument of who did it first, who was there first, we're not going to end. The Jews were there first. That's where the whole Bible, all the stories, even before Muhammad went to illumination, if that's the way we say it, before Jesus. Jesus was a rabbi. He was a Jewish rabbi, or he was Jewish, right? So we all know. So the truth matters always, since the beginning of times. And that's why I went into scripture, even though I'm an economist, I'm actually a political scientist, but we need to understand, and Professor Jordan Peterson, it's really going to how we as a society really think. And the process, whether those stories are just allegories or just real narratives, Cain killed Abel. And that's the spirit. That's the spirit that never ended. Abraham didn't believe in the God's promise. So he tried to do what he wanted. They tried to circumvent the process. And that's what Ishmael comes. Because he wanted to have a child. So there are mistakes from all the sides. And it started with Abraham. The father, one of the most important figures in Judaism, and even for Christians, that everything started there. Because Israel was given the promise to his son as well, to his descendant, Isaac. Jacob, Isaac, so the three. And looking at this with a fresh eye, maybe honestly the promise was just to Jacob, which means that God didn't want anything to do with Ishmael. But there is in Scripture, and I don't know how to cite Scripture, but there is in Scripture saying that when Abraham was expelling Ishmael, his mother, Agar, he blessed them. And Arabs during the Middle Ages were doing poetry, mathematics, so many things we learn from the Middle East. Some of the most prosperous empires were from the Middle East before. So I don't believe that promise was just to the Jews. And honestly, during the process that the Crusades, and we Christians started the holy wars. And the whole process of we trying to prove them wrong, they're trying to prove us wrong, is wrong. We need to look forward. And I believe there's another element, and that was given by Jesus. And it's not a small element. The idea of eye for an eye. I went to law school. The idea of eye for an eye, it was profound at a time, because essentially it was a proportional punishment to proportion to the crime. But when Jesus brings, and I'm talking the point of view of legal point of view, and he's talking about forgiveness, that's both the ultimate payment, punishment, and resolution. We're far from that. What the more liberals, or I would say left, whatever we describe, I have a different point of view of what is left and right. But what they try to do with so much impunity is not the same. Love, you don't want to not punish your child. It doesn't mean you have to hate it, but you need to discipline. So it's important to have rules. It's important to discipline your kids. So in a functional society, the rule of law is critical. God is just, and there's such a thing as justice. There's such a thing as something that is beyond our comprehension of just what is just. And because of that, we need to combine all these pieces together. And I know the Jews believe they got the Jews believe they got the answer. They got the truth. The Arabs believe they got the truth. And the Christians believe they have the final truth. And there's a problem with that, because if everyone has the truth, either one of the three is wrong or we're all wrong. And I believe we're all wrong. What I believe is we have pieces of a puzzle. And all over the world, we need to understand how we can move forward. And this is the time for all of us to take a stand, to pick sides. And the only side is not against or in favor of Hamas. It's against or in favor of the truth. And we will have the opportunity to go into details once the conflict is over, how best Israel can deal with Hamas or the Palestinians. Palestine, and this is the important thing about the truth. There was never a Palestinian. There was never a Palestine. There was punishment by Rome to the Jews. Judea became Palestine, and it doesn't mean what the Palestinians are not Arabs. They're more related to Philistines. So we believe everybody deserve a home. So they're there. So it doesn't matter that they weren't there 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. It doesn't matter. It is not an apartheid state. We as real Christians, not real, but we as people that really want to have peace, and peace sometimes requires tough choices. And the tough choice now for you and I, we're not in war, but so that this war doesn't come to our homes. Because I can talk to some of my friends, they're Jewish, and I've never thought they would be afraid to be Jewish in the United States. I sympathize. I call myself a Jew today. I published a video because I don't want to wait, because they will come for all of us. But I don't hold Arabs in general. But there are a part of the Arabs. They're extremist Muslim. They went to the extremists. And they're Jews, they're extreme. But the problem is the Arabs are winning. Within the Muslims, the most extreme. Look, when I see people in New York, London, Paris, I think they were controlled, screaming, "Gas the Jews," we lost as humanity. And my prayers goes to the children in Palestine, all the people that are dying. I make no difference between a Jewish kid, Israeli kid, a Palestinian kid, American. It's not okay. But it's a complex situation because they attacked. And honestly, if we are gonna use the who did it first, remember, the Jews were expelled. And the Jews have something to be blamed. Throughout history, the prophets were sent to warn the Jews. So they had the temple destroyed one time, and then the second time. So they have been exiled. They have lost the land that was promised to them exactly because they didn't follow all their obligations. We believe that God had a covenant with Moses, with David, and I believe with Noah. And they all didn't fulfill everything. So Abraham, Moses, David, and that Jesus so I think that's one of the understanding, that he brought those covenant back. And regardless of what happened, we need to understand one thing, and one thing alone. We need to find a solution where the children of God start working together, because someone is benefiting from this. And I understand there's money to be made at war, weapons, reconstruction, oil, you have interest, but since 1945, when the US detonated the 2 atomic bombs during World War II, war became no longer an option and no longer a political or economic tool. And it seems that we haven't really figured that out yet. So in 1963, we almost, during the Cuban Missiles Crisis, we almost went through Armageddon. Really, like end of the world type of thing. And right now, in 2023, we have 2 active wars. Ukraine and Israel in the Middle East. And nothing good can come out of that. It's not by accident It's not by accident that apparently in scripture says that the end of the world will start there. But it doesn't have to be that. Honestly, I believe that's the way it's going to do. But I also think, no, I honestly believe if we all work together, and we say we all, really, because the people from Hamas, they're in Qatar, they're not unsafe. And Israel has a horrible problem in their hands. And I will support, because it's a completely chaotic thing. But my advice, if I have any say on it, you just have to be held at a different standard. And the point that we Christians can bring to this conversation is that we have to find a way of loving them. And I cannot even believe to start to think how we would do this. If someone had killed my wife and my son first, I don't know what I've done. So when I see the images and I hear Ben, it touches. And I don't believe anyone is really evil. Even those people fighting, it's a very powerful. It's part of us. This is between the two sides. And I'm not saying Jews and Arabs. I'm saying the two sides we all have as humans, a good and a bad side. And what happened in Europe in World War II? Afterwards, I mean, the horrors that happened during the World War II, we should never forget. So we shouldn't be okay with wars just in Europe. Ukraine, I mean, it's a proxy war and it's not going to end up good. And I understand the complexity, the geopolitical situations, China, Russia, US, Europe, but it's not going to end well. Okay? It's hard for us to go back to an idea of an integrated world, but peace is the only way. Nuclear or even conventional war is not only going to cost us all, but it may bring us to the end of the world. So there's no scenario that we all going to win this. And honestly, whoever wins a war, nobody. We, as humans, can spend millions in saving a baby. And I would have done it. But we also spend millions killing people. I believe the world was given to us. I understand now the argument from both Jews, Muslims, and Christians. God gave us this planet for us to rule over it. Nature, we need to care for nature. We don't need to be controlled by nature. Human ingenuity is always going to be the solution. But what we see now more and more is like we don't have anything. Simple truths are gone. We cannot even know what is a boy and is a girl. That's profound. And that's not by accident. If we read everything, this is to destroy Western society. They wrote in the 60s manifestos, socialist manifesto. It's very well prepared. They have been doing this for the last 80, 100 years. And I was very much a Democrat in the US. I've worked for Democratic campaigns in Boston. John Kerry, senator, ran for president. Governor Robert Reich was my professor. So it puzzles me that I wouldn't say I wouldn't consider myself a Republican in the U.S. I'm always believe in the middle, and honestly, as an economist and a political scientist, I believe we need to do some changes in how we structure the world or any political system. However, I'll come back to the story that I said we need to really support Israel and the United States. And when I say this, I'm not talking about Israel, the state itself only. The idea of a world, of a country that is based on principles of goodness, of the law of God, and not Sharia, that is extremist. So it's a balance. And why do I say America? Because America was this experiment that we still haven't been able to get to the point that was written in the Constitution in 1776. It was such a leap of faith, such an amazing vision of man, flawed man, that we, the people, right now, we have to bring that back. I had the same doubts. I'm 48 now. I had my first child a year and a half ago. I thought that, that was stupid. Have a family, marry, commitment. Honestly, I had to go through hell, horrible relationships, and for the past 10 years, I kind of realized deep inside there was something wrong. And finally hit me, and I start to this, learning process about myself. And it's profound when you have a kid. I thought that was not really. I really didn't think that was a real thing. But if you think about it, it's like a man and a woman caring for a child is very similar to that relationship that some people have with their God, whatever they believe, or this being. We all want to be gods. Some people say that we were thrown in this place and fallen angels, Lucifer, whatever, they wanted to be God. Maybe we are part of it. Because everything we do, it's very egocentric. But when we are able to care for a child, it is the closest thing we get to, like maybe some sort of agape, like the pure love. And we're far from what God could actually love, if that understanding. Because essentially, how can we be something that is so profoundly different and bigger than us, but is a relationship of a father? When Jesus, I've been thinking about that, a father figure, not really a bad thing, not like Jehovah, something that is like a king and it's going to punish. I don't believe that. I don't believe the Jews are being punished by their action, or the Arabs. I believe we punish ourselves. If we think about physics right now, and every action has a reaction, that should make more sense. We know now that matter doesn't really exist. Everything is energy. We're learning much more. And everybody that talks about, personal growth, about attraction, but honestly, they have a clue. All in Jewish law, in Jewish literature, in Jewish scripture, the idea of you protecting your country, your family, those values are the basics. That's why they're so prosperous. And we should learn with them. And obviously, that has brought a lot of jealousy. But look at Israel. Look at Israel what would be Israel today in the 30s and the 20s was a desert. Look at Dubai. Can you imagine what would be the Middle East if those two tribes, I'm just call it the Arabs, the Muslims, and the Jews unite? And we were on the tracks to do that. You know, Bahrain, the UAE, and then Saudi Arabia was supposed to have finalized the peace. Who actually wins? You know, I don't know. But someone doesn't want that to happen. Because that could be the promised land for all humanity. During the Middle Ages, while in Europe people were like killing each other, eating with their hands, in the Orient, in Asia, in the Middle East, they were doing poetry, they were painting, they were doing mathematics. So there's, you know, the abacus, so much. And a lot of this has lost because of the Crusades killed a lot of people. And that is the seed of the hate. The seed of the hate is actually when, my opinion, when Ishmael is expelled. What kind of father does that? Especially because he disobeyed God. So that's I wouldn't say the original sin, but that's the problem. And why didn't the world really brought the Arabs in 48 or in 39, when we were discussing end of the World War, to actually bring them into the conversation? The British were the rulers. The only one occupying what was now Palestine was the British. Before it was the Turks, the Ottoman empires, and so many empires. They never had a land. Now, in 48, they had a chance to have a land. But that hate had been planted millennia ago. And it has to have so much hate. You know, if we see this,
People show it to me and show it to the viewers of the show. But who is surprised that a man whose name whose podcast is Young Turks, who perpetrated the Armenian genocide? The Young Turks is like calling your podcast the Young Nazi, the Young Yugoslav. They killed 1.5 to 2 million Armenians between 1915 and 1918. And the Armenian community has begged for trying to change the name of the show. The first half of his life was completely genocide. Now he is a Holocaust denier because he is saying that the Jews are engaged in genocide of Palestinians. Which nation, how can there be 1.8?
that's what we should do.
The murder of 20,000 Palestinians, 8,000.
We should do this.
Many children.
We should look for something like this.
Able to communicate with them for the last 3 days, communication lost. So we don't know what.
The interview that I didn't know, I didn't know this comedian, and the first interview, I think everybody was a little taken, but I honestly look at this conflict, and that's why I'm really opening my heart here. I look at the conflict it's such a complicated thing, because this is essentially the existential question humans need to answer: which path we're going to take. Because in the general sense, we all believe we need to love ourselves, right? So the commandments is love thy God, love thy neighbor. So the Jews believe, don't recall exactly where, if you hate someone, you're hating God. So the idea, obviously, when someone's attacking you, when Jesus brought something very different, because turning the other cheek, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to defend yourself. But my question, and I believe honestly that the difficulty people are having with the response Israel is doing is because it's just more of the same. And they're totally morally justified. Nobody would ever ask Germany, should they have not carpet bombed Germany? So, and I don't know the answer to that. But maybe there was another way, maybe there wasn't. But how could we deal with this? And I understand that we as humans that have evolved, we don't want another World War II. We don't want another Nagasaki, right? Maybe it was necessary then, and that's why the war tribunals in Nuremberg was an idea that even in war, we shouldn't do certain things. But where was the international community for the past almost 20 years? Hamas took over the Gaza in 2005. Why you guys kept sending billions if everybody knew they're doing bombs, shelters, rockets? What is the purpose? We should ask, because it's everybody's taxpayers. We should ask, why was that far? That is not a concentration camp, for God's sake. Have you ever been? No, I swear that it's I wish I could swear because I want to keep this polite. But it's so pathetic. I understand the sentiment and everybody's so hateful. But we need to have the truth established. So a couple things. There's no such thing of a Palestinian state. There has never been. There has been attempts to have a two-state solution. Fatah, Hamas, nobody really wanted. The Palestinian people are the ones in the middle. They have very bad leadership. And the hate is so intrinsic that they need an enemy. But the real enemy is poverty, hungry, disease. Those are the real enemies. That's why I love development economics. Look at Dubai. Look at Saudi Arabia. All that money, all those resources. Why did they put the billions of dollars from all of you, of us, into that? So when they say there's no water, why didn't they build water supplies? Desalinization, they destroy what the Jews did. Jews value education, knowledge, and that's why they're able to sustain in the desert. Now one of the beacons of innovation in technology. Why can't we do the same? Here in Brazil, we have horrible leadership. We have all the resources. Israel was built on a desert. Can you imagine what we all could do here? Arabic innovation, resources. Jewish innovation, resources. And we have the natural resources. God may be Brazilian because everything is beautiful here, but at the same time, we haven't been able to do anything with our stuff. And the most wasted resource we have is the people. Beautiful people. And I believe we Brazilians have something to collaborate with this. Not what Lula is saying. You know why? Because in São Paulo, Jews and Arabs, they're friends. I'm not sure now, but I didn't realize how bad that could be until I went to the US. Kind of like ghettos and everything. Here is much more of a melting pot, much more of a intricate society. We have let the world fall into horrible tribes. And I found in the scripture too, it says that we're gonna divide, and there's gonna be father against son, daughter against mom, and that's exactly what's happening. But I believe we have a solution if we just stop doing it. That's very hard. This is the most difficult conflict. But there might be a way. When I see, and I'm going to put all these links here, I just want you to listen to this guy. His name is I can't pronounce his name. What this doctor did made me believe again that maybe I'll never have to go through what he just did. And I honestly pray to God that I can have the same reaction that he does. And I'm not trying to oversight one side or the other, but this is the solution. This is the solution. Something on that line. And Pierce, I really thank you for participating in this conversation. Your honest feedback and the people you brought, even the fighting, it's gonna take somewhere. But take a look.
In the most brutal manner imaginable, blown to pieces by this tank, and you were there. And there was an extraordinary moment, and I have asked if you're comfortable with us to play a little bit of this, because I remember at the time I was at CNN, was about to join CNN, and I remember hearing this, and it was just so moving, because you had a friend at an Israeli television station, and you had regular dialogue with him during this war, and you would call in and you'd update and so on. And you came on and you spoke to him just after you lost your daughters to this strike, because this is a little bit of that conversation.
יש לו 8 ילדים שבמשך כל המלחמה הוא הגן עליהם בבית שלו, בבית נריה. אולי הדבר היחיד שאנחנו יכולים לעשות זה לקנות למי שיכול כבר, אולי בצה"ל, בבית שלו, אולי שתגיד את הבית שלך, איפה אתה נמצא, אולי שיש לך אמבולנסים אליך, אולי יאפשרו להגיע לך באמבולנסים.
It's one of the most agonising things I've ever watched on television. And eventually, your friend, that representative, he had to go because he wanted to keep talking to you. And he was so distressed himself, he wanted to go off and do it privately, which he did. But an agonising moment for you, for him, for everybody involved in that. And as a consequence of that, many people in your position may have chosen a path of wanting revenge or retribution in some way, to meet violence with violence, but you went completely different way. And you ended up taking your family, and you ended up in Canada. How did you find the strength to not go down the path of wanting revenge?
It's important that you mentioned, because my wife passed away 16th of September 2008,
Yeah.
quarter to 5 p.m. And my daughters were killed 16th of January 2009, quarter to 5 p.m. 4 months exactly. 2 traumas, tragedies. What you heard, what I said, Ya Allah, Ya Rab, you know the meaning. Oh God, oh Lord.
Yes.
At that moment, as what I see now, I lost faith in humanity. Because the world was watching what is happening. As we are watching what is happening now, Palestinians are just numbers. They are not numbers. They are human.
Yes.
And that's what I would like each of us who are watching to zoom in, to put himself in the position of the
You know
Palestinians.
what you did so powerfully, Doctor, was when you showed pictures of your family.
So
You put a name to the face,
Yes.
and you made people at home watching this
But
understand.
tell me, but it's important, but tell me, I am a person of faith. This is important. My life experience, my profession as a medical doctor. If a patient dies, I don't stay there. I have to move to the next patient. To say, but I need to learn why the first patient died, and what are the causes, the triggers of the death of that patient.
This is such a powerful interview. I honestly believe everyone should watch. Because to have someone that lost just recently 20 other family members in total, I believe 30 or 40 in total, maybe we will reach our time of 4 p.m. He lost his wife to cancer, and 4 months, his 2 daughters. I don't know what to say. If a man with such pain, a doctor, he says he couldn't save them. But you know what? We can. We can save the children, the women and the women, the men, everybody. Not today, but maybe tomorrow. And every single day, if you hear this or someone says something about this, just plant the seeds for a different future. Because the path we are in is not going to take in a while. We're not going to go to a good place. Love is really the only way. And the only solution really is if we all decided that peace is the only option. And peace is a struggle. It's not about giving up. It's about making sure evil does not win. And there's one side that's evil. Israel is not targeting civilians, but Hamas is so desperate because they don't care. They're putting themselves, they have done suicide bombs. That's the lowest, as a human being got to the lowest point. There's like no other way in their mind. And we shouldn't worry about that because we all created that. To think about this, if they can kill themselves, they believe in something, whether that's good or not, they believe of that because desperate people believe in desperate things. If half of the population of Gaza are children, what have they learned? And this is the conundrum, and here's when you say there's a moral problem. But how you reconcile this if we just don't stop? Because both sides can claim the land, who started first, they're right, they're wrong. We need to stop blaming. We all are to blame. That's really what happens. Since Adam and Eve, they ate the apple. And that's really trying to take control of the world by our own hands. We as humans are horrible. We are egocentric. We can't follow simple rules. We only need laws because we are not normal when it comes to living together. If people followed like the commandments or the ideal, the principles that God gave to Abraham, Jesus gave it to us, Buddhists believe, the Muslims, the law is simple. We don't need police. We wouldn't need courts. We would be able to deal with this as a community. But since we grew so much, we need a structure. But even that has to be based on those principles. We should not hate our enemy, but we should punish. There should be repercussions. The only place we got close to some sort of reparation or reconciliation was in South Africa. And it's an imperfect case, but it's possible. There was atrocities in the past, but this is the most recent one, and they were able to reconcile, and that was an apartheid state. So before we can call names, like it's a concentration camp. No, it's not a concentration camp. Concentration camps don't receive billions of dollars to use for weapons. Concentration camps don't have a weapon, don't have an army, don't have guns. So we need to put aside narratives It doesn't help anyone. Right? So, Hamas, terrorist. Hezbollah, terrorist. They don't have the backing. The Palestinian people are not doing good because of them, not of Israel. Israel put a wall. Yes, that's a bad thing. But why did they put a wall? Because they were throwing bombs. They were doing. But so if we start saying who did it first, and we're gonna go all the way back to, I don't know, Abraham? And what about the Canaanites? The Philistines, they were killed too. Should we reparate them? So this whole game of going back and, okay, this is the situation. There are two sets of people claim that land. Israel is okay in sharing the land, or at least it was. A lot of people, a lot of the Jews are. So let's do that. Period. If anyone is throwing rockets, not rocks, rocks too, and how can you blame the other side for overreacting, putting a wall? So I understand the claim when that Palestinian activist saying that they started. No, they didn't start it. I don't even know who started. Whoever started is actually dead. 1948 is a long time ago. But the whole place, they attacked them. The Yom Kippur. You understand how bad the Jews got? And I understand the claim. They have been expelled from a lot of places. So, in the future, we should all think about that too. Because God sent prophets to alert the Jewish kings. Solomon had 40 years of peace. We need a government like that. That region, this region here had 4 years of peace. That's, I think this is the King David and a little bit before. So why can we try to do something like this? What I believe is there is something for all of us to learn here. Israel and the United States. Not the country, not necessarily. I'm talking about the ideal. This is like really, really old promise. And if we look at the map, what was promised, it's from the two rivers, from the Nile to the Euphrates. That is the promised land. So, all of you, and I'm gonna give you my 2 cents. I'll do my part. We're gonna still work with technology, trying to bring better conditions of living for everybody in the world. I believe in life. I believe everybody deserves to have access to basic things. I see your humanity, Gazans. I understand your hate. I don't agree with it, but I understand. The Israelis, I understand your hate. I understand, but I also don't agree. You have been attacked, and you have survived. When I see the young soldiers, I remember my friends at Brandeis. Some of them actually went to serve. I don't want any one of them to die. And that can be selfish for me. I take it. I really don't. I believe there's always a solution. And a peace solution technically means that we're not going to get everything we want. There's no such a thing, Netanyahu, of erasing Hamas. Hamas are not people. They're an evil idea. The only way you can end Hamas is by erasing the idea of Hamas, of showing how great the West is. We need to give the Arabs the choice. A world like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, beautiful Dubai, things, or like Israel, or the barbarics of like hundreds of even thousands of years ago that we are like fighting each other like animals. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the animals. Animals don't fight each other like this. They fight to eat. They don't get billions of dollars. Instead of eating, putting food on the table, water, sanitation, they don't build rockets. They don't build tunnels underneath hospitals because the law of war says you wouldn't be hit. I mean, you have the images. We cannot allow what we're looking now in the West. In the cities dear to my heart, like New York, Boston, London, Washington, D.C., people literally protesting in favor of a terrorist group. On the morning of September 11th, at 4 a.m., I was actually driving through New York. I was going to sleep there. I had just done a road trip. I was going back to college. I almost slept there. My mom was in the car, but it'd been like a month and a half, 2 months traveling. We went back to Boston. And it was weird waking up at, we got there 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and I kind of still was kind of going to sleep at the sofa. CNN was on, and I remember hearing and something U.S. under attack, and that image of the smoke and New York City, the tip of Manhattan. I thought it was a movie. It was kind of like that sleepy stage. I thought it was like Armageddon again, like the movie around that time. We did a lot of mistakes that caused September 11th, both on the point of geopolitical, the uncertainty around the Middle East, and we shouldn't be too fast in saying that it is justified to have attacked the Taliban or Iraq afterwards, the whole lies about weapons of mass destruction. Lies are worse than nuclear bombs. What happened after that war that just ended in a very bad way? We just killed one snake, Saddam said maybe, and we unleash thousands of worse snakes. Back to that point of actions have consequences. Ideas have consequences, but actions do. If we throw more fire in this, it's not going to be different. The ultimate weapon, and I actually read Revelations, which would be the end of the world as we know it. The ultimate weapon, the ultimate war. That's weird because it says it's like a war. Jesus is in front as a lamb, and they have an army of 120,000, which maybe is something related to the 12 tribes, and they just go. They came from all over the world, and they all get slaughtered. That makes no sense to me. That peace movement, maybe they're trying to do this, but the fact is, People that go to war, and I've talked to a lot of them. That was fascinating to me because they all say it changes. When we see things we can never unseen. And sometimes we lose faith in humanity. And when I see that guy, that father, it renews whatever was there. But I'm not becoming religious, I'm becoming more spiritual. And I believe God always believed in us. So we can figure this out. We really can. And we will. But not me, not you, all of us. Because there are some bad apples. Honestly, they say that the devil makes all this mess because he can be saved. He's condemned forever. But if we use the same logic, and I know probably no biblical scholar is going to agree, that's my take. No children, none of my children, whatever bad things they did, I would condemn them forever. And we all, children of God, at least, even the angels were. So, the devil has their, and maybe he doesn't believe he has salvation, but I believe God is welcoming him at some point, or willing to help. I mean, that's really the narrative that most cultures, you're gonna go to a place, you're coming back home. That's that feeling of loss that we all have, where we came from. Is there something behind? Is there a God? Those questions are eternal questions. They didn't start it today. When we say there's no boys, no girls, that I can become a girl if I feel like it, that's an attack on God. We are once again saying we are gods. And then we can just say, and we are. God made a mistake. And I'm not minimizing the hurt that those people go through. After all, they're literally mutilating themselves. But they're also a victim of a lie. You know? And that is one of the issues that this year brought so much questioning. You know, I questioned so much about why we were doing this. It's because we needed to question simple truth. Because we cannot believe in anything anymore. Right now, AI can generate a video, a photo, can fake your voice. So we need to have a different set of tools. We need to feel, and I don't know. It says that our heart is kind of the beacon that should, like the compass that should take us to the right place. And that's the connection with spirituality. I really like the work that Russell Brunson is doing. So he brought some of this conversation. He's just, Russell Brand, sorry. He was accused of rape like 20 years ago. And there's so many things happening. So many people coming from different spheres, and we all should look. Because yesterday, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, Elon Musk really told the truth. We are living in a time that doesn't matter who you are, if you're really good. What matters if you feel you're good. There's no one gaining from the propaganda of LGBTQ+. Not even them. You know, they were accepted 3 years ago. Now people are like creating another division. We're all humans. We're children of God. Let's take that perspective. Let's all help each other, help your neighbor. We don't need governments to to do a lot of things if we are caring for. Look at communities like you see Jewish communities, sometimes Chinese, Asians, Indians. They help each other. They hire each other. They help them with referrals. They share expenses. They live together. That is a community. That's actually the sense of a community. That's where the nation state idea comes about. It's like a bigger community. We all together, and we have to have a fabric of society. America is crumbling because they wanted to destroy the West. The idea they couldn't compete with the freedom, they couldn't compete with the growth economically, and they had to destroy the fabric. So we don't know who we are anymore, and it's correct to question wars, the big pharma. Okay, there are inconsistencies in that economic model. That's not really true capitalism. That is cronyism. That's actually a flaw in the system. But come on, we're not the bad people. We have done bad things. I would put the Crusades as like the worst things we did. And the Arabs are not the evil. They brought a lot of information, mathematics, but recently we destroyed them during that time. So right now we need to bring them up. We all should come up. So there's no point in leaving America and Americans with so many issues, inflation, poverty, so many weird things happening. And we are literally burning cash from Europe and from the US in a war. That makes absolutely no sense. It makes sense that you think that all those interests are aligned, oil, economics, but that's no longer valid. If we poke Putin, he will probably shoot us as well with the nukes. So there's not an option. We lied. We had a deal, and when we say we're talking about the West itself. NATO didn't move 1 inch, moved hundreds of miles. So it is not justified, but it's understandable. So I understand because I can think, and I can use history as a background. I don't agree with what he did, but in his mind, that's the only alternative. In Hamas' mind, that is the best strategy. We all can agree that was horrible because they don't care for the same things. Douglas Murray, and I think he's going through, it's been tough for him. But that's the point. And I'm not mentioning all Muslims, but if you take that position of the most extremist life and the life of us, the infidels, don't matter anything. Even their own lives don't matter. That's why they have no conundrum to put kids, women and children, and make sure they are in the hospital or in the house so that they can use this as propaganda. You know, I know some people are saying that the audio that ADF intercept saying that, oh, no, we're not going to take the people out because it's good for propaganda. I mean, they recorded that. That was in 2021. I guess AI was not that modern yet. But how can we believe in something? I mean, we're not going to believe in the pictures, in the body parts that are being still going through in Israel. We all can lose faith in humanity. But if we're that barbaric again, if we remember September 11th, the 3,000 plus people that died, but we also don't feel bad about the Iraqis, the civilians, or the Taliban. They're all children of God. We may disagree. We don't believe they were right, But I never heard of a mass about those victims. And what happened afterwards? Look at the Middle East. Look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. It's worse. It's worse than it was before. Eye for an eye doesn't work. In the end, we will all be blind. And that's the most amazing thing that God, through Jesus in that teaching, brought to this universe. The idea of forgiveness is not from this world. That's why we don't understand. We can barely forgive ourselves for the stuff we do, for the shit we do. That's not from this world. And that's why it's hard for us. But that doctor, to see the humanity, and that he was the first doctor to actually, I think, an Arab or Palestinian doctor who worked in Israel, hence not an apartheid state, because essentially in South Africa, where that concept came from, you couldn't do that. You have Arabs in the Knesset, like their Congress. You have doctors, you have people, professionals, they do have jobs. But it's a difficult imbalance. I mean, it's a difficult situation because during the 90s and early 2000s, I mean, they were actually being targeted. There were suicide bombs all over the place in Israel. I remember some Israeli went to school with me, and it was a difficult time because essentially a Palestinian could actually just be, and men and women and even like young people, they could be a suicide bomb. How can you have a normal relationship with your neighbor, or because they can see, they can hear? How can you actually be safe? So that's a problem. That's why you put walls. And I totally understand the concept of trying to protect, but that actually made it worse, because the evil people actually had a narrative, and a perfect narrative. Look, they put us in a wall. Oh, we're in a concentration camp. Look, for them, I don't think they wouldn't understand the difference. But it's preposterous that for us in the West, for people that have access to programs like Piers Morgan or any of their other shows, to repeat this stupidity. Look, go read history. If you want to say that it's a bad situation there, yes, it's horrible. But where were you? Where were you? What was the outrage about all the other Arabs that were being killed in Syria and Yemen? What happened? It's just the Palestinians cannot be killed? The other Muslims can? Or even when Jordan expelled the Palestinians, oh, that's fine, but the Jews can't. And I agree. We all should be held at a higher moral. But it's clear a double standard. And this virus, the woke mind virus, and the anti-Semitism is very present. And to end this diatribe that I just wanted to put out, I promise you one thing. That new world that God promised Abraham, and I believe to Ishmael as well, and to us Christians, and to the Buddhists, and to anyone that wants to join, is a very different world. And there's no ruler. We all just take care of our own lives, follow the principles, basic things, help each other. We all grow. You see, when there's economic growth in a country, everybody rises. Socialism does not work. But I believe it's very attractive to people because there's that sense of community. So We need to create a new system, like something that has all those rules that God gave us. You know, it seems so simple to me thinking now as a political scientist. I could see that the models, economic models, don't work, and because we're using wrong principles. So we should look into very detailed around the idea of America and the idea of Israel, the idea that God promised to Abraham, to Jacob, to Isaac, and to Jacob. That idea. The Muslims want also a very strong family. Sharia is not compatible. That's one side. It's like we reading the Bible and then we see that, oh, an adulterer, we stone the women. We're not doing that anymore. We have to evolve. And Elon Musk is under attack. And he's very brave. What he did yesterday, and he had said that in another interview about the Princess Bride, and I don't really know what he meant. Maybe because one of his daughter, it's they don't talk, and she became a trans. She's trans, so I think that's a painful thing for him. He was the darling of the left because of Tesla saving the world and going to Mars. He's just as liberal as I am. The truth matters. Borders matter. Punishment, security matters. Well, we're looking at New York, Boston, and it's preposterous. It's so sad to see what happened to San Francisco, to LA, but especially San Francisco. Such a beautiful city. A friend of mine went there recently and is like, what is that? And then Xi Jinping comes and you clean it? So it wasn't really good, right? If that was okay before. So there are elections in the US this year. And all elections are important. But the biggest thing we need to do now is really focus on one thing and one thing alone: the truth. Because that is the basics of everything. And having a dialogue, because we need the truth, at least even our own truth, like not the real, like the universal truth, but we need to come to a dialogue with each other. And even if our truths are limited and maybe partial, if we are able to bring all sides together, we will prevail. And the blackmail that he is Elon Musk, and the narrative about what he said. Look, if we scrutinize every single thing we say, and don't take things into consideration, like we're trying to improve the world, it's hard. We're not God. We're gonna make mistakes. He's definitely not an anti-Semite. There is a lot of anti-Semitism. We can see on the streets, gas the Jews in Australia. People burning flags and killing. There was a Jewish man killed in California. People in Australia like an Israeli flag. You know, I've seen today an Israeli flag. I feel like putting one here, because that is, if you want to come for me as well, because eventually you will come. So I want to fight now. And when I say fight, words. The truth will set you free, and the truth is so powerful. If Twitter goes bankrupt, that's fine. Elon's gonna survive. But will the world? We need to come up with alternatives for the truth. And all sides want to censor. That's not wise. I don't think that's really Cainian, the Cainian spirit. Cain, evil. I don't know, maybe that's the point. But you know what? Technology cannot be stopped. If you censor, it's very easy to do another platform. We will find each other. The Christians during the early years were persecuted. They would meet in dungeons, and they were like a cult. They were like hidden. They had to escape, and that's what we're gonna do. But if we have to pick a side, we need to pick for the right reasons. So we need to come up with this together. It has to be based on the truth. We're gonna make mistakes. We need to have an alternative. Honestly, I understand the whole boycotting, but to be honest with you, there are more of us than there are of them. Honestly, people are good. There's no such a thing as evil. Evil is the absence of love. That's what it says. Cold is the absence of heat. You can really have cold. So it's a process, and we all gonna have to do it together. And it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a movement of millions. It's gonna take daily action, daily internal questioning. Like, why do we feel that hate? Why do we jump to conclusions? Why can we just agree that no one should be dying right now? In 2023, with so much wonders that technology has brought us, science, we shouldn't have gone through that. COVID, the misinformation. And honestly, I believed in the guidelines because I saw the data, but they didn't put all the data. So we, as a nation in one world, in our respectively tribes, countries, communities, we need to start asking questions. There is enough for everybody. 2018, the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Prize in Economics, a theory of endogenous growth that I loved when in college. The more people, the more innovation, the more we all rise. No Malthusian is like the whole thing about the world's gonna end. We need it. No. The World Economic Forum is wrong. It is. That Nobel Peace Prize and the reality we live in shows we don't need to have less people. They have been saying that we needed less people, and that argument is from the 1800s. Malthus is an economist. We have almost 8 billion people. We didn't die, and there's enough food for everybody. We just don't distribute. We have the wrong incentives. So why we keep lying to each other or to ourselves? Yes, it's warmer. Yes, the science says that global warming is a reality, but we also have data that says from time to time that happens, and time is like billions of years, and it is costing us more. All the hurricanes and disasters, drought, but we can't solve that, and that's the point. We shouldn't take anything as a dogma. The data doesn't support that. I mean, unless you say you're flat Earth, the data supports you're wrong. But a lot of the other things, I mean, we're still beginning to understand this is such a complex thing. We always want to be God, but this is such a complex. Like when you look at the world, the billions of different variables that we'd have to consider, maybe with more AI, more computing power, we can actually make sense of all that information, all the data. But one of the things, like if anything in that theory is wrong, we maybe base all of this in our own things. And economically, if you look at the economics, all that is being proposed to stop CO2 doesn't work. We don't have that yet. There's so many more practical solutions and we're not looking at. So, do we really want to save the planet? Because we're not going to the right place. Even like with the whole green ESG type of thing, it's not. It doesn't. The numbers don't lie. It's not working. I heard from this guy in kind of what you're saying. One of those people that was in New York, I think. He was saying that all of this is the devil. I was like, man, crazy guy. Jesus. But you know what? Whoever wants people killed. This whole idea of snapping a finger and half of the universe, that's even really evil. Thanos is not a hero. He's evil. But why we have a movie where he's kind of that weird hero, weird villain that is kind of a villain but a hero? No, he's a villain. There's no need to kill half. So when we read the reset, what Schwab from the World Economic Forum believe that we need to have less people travel less, do this, and the argument doesn't hold. I mean, they're traveling more. Private planes are not very good for the environment. Why don't we think of solutions like Elon Musk is doing, decreasing, improving, making sure and alternative energies are a solution. Nuclear is a solution. We're far ahead on, I believe it's not level, third or fourth, fifth generations. So I feel for people like Greta that believe, and people throwing the soup and oil on the masterpieces. They're like just a pawn. They're just pawns in a game. They don't even know they're being used. So, why X, Rumble, Locals? It's important. Because, and those to name a few, but we need platforms where we can speak the truth. And if we start, and this is a theory around extremism, speech, why the freedom of speech is so important, and even like bad speech, like especially like very like Nazis, and it was a study, I forgot the name of the author, but his argument, it's really powerful because you don't solve the problem of Nazism or the Nazi speech or anything like that, or really bad or racism, with censoring that. You show the market of ideas, your idea. And the fact is, if your idea lose to racist, white supremacist, Nazis, your idea is horrible, because those ideas are horrible. So we have the moral superiority. We lost doing some of that crap, wars and crazy things for the past 20, 30, 40 years. We need to bring that back, the moral superiority. We need to show the world. We need to show and give substance to the Muslims that don't really want that Sharia law. In the end of the day, I travel a lot. You can see that people just want to be. They just want to have their lives. So I invite you to share this video, to share those ideas, to work. This is going to be a global effort. This is really the community. This is really, how can I say, a global effort. We're like a big tribe, and we're not doing well by all standards. We're on the brink of something really bad happening. But it makes no sense. We live in the time of the history that we're most prosperous, have access to the most, we're the richest we ever been. Yeah, there's still poverty, but like the barbarics you saw on October the 7th was a daily occurrence hundreds of years ago, 200 years ago. Until 2000, the greatest cause of death in the world was diarrhea. You can look it up, because that just means like no access to water, sanitation, good food, mostly in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and Latin America. That's ridiculous. We sent a man to the moon in the 60s. We have computers. We have so much. I mean, Elon Musk even changed the whole thing. His rocket actually reversed. So, if we allow a small number of people, business CEOs, to kill Twitter, that's the first battle we lose. Because we should demand, not ask, for freedom of speech. And we're gonna have to think better and hard how to deal with the extremists on both sides, on all spectrums. But silencing them is not the way. The criminal conduct is already available. If you can if you can prove that, it's a smear campaign, there are laws, and look what happened to Elon Musk or to Twitter now, and he's suing Media Matters. I think it's Media Matters, the name of the entity, and they manipulate the algorithm. That the claim that he's anti-Semitic. So, should we boycott Disney? Should we boycott all those companies that are boycotting Twitter? Should we use the same weapon? This is something that I'm not sure, because if we all use the same methods, maybe we're not better than them. However, it does say that we have to make a choice. And it looks like there will be kind of two worlds, like two different schools, school systems, banks, transport, car companies. I don't know. Maybe that's the path. I really don't think it would be the good path, but it looks like we will have two different worlds. A world that believes in one reality and the world that believes in a different reality. It's kind of looking at, sometimes when you look at CNN and Fox, I mean, they're not living in the same world. And sometimes this is right, sometimes this is right. We have been lied so much, and honestly right now I don't even know what the truth is, but I know we need to find it. We need to question. We need to have transparency. So if there was a laptop, everybody should have known. We are entitled to make our decisions or to make a mistake. If there was a collusion in Russia with Trump, we should have known. But if it was a lie, we should know as well. So we can have that feudalism, and it's like, if my team is winning, don't care what they did. It can be that way. And, we have an election to the world that is very important this year. And we should look at a fresh start. What they did to Robert F. Kennedy, a great lawyer, he has been canceled, killed like his father and his uncle. Not physically killed, but his reputation. People don't even interview him. But he has 20% on the polls. You know what the dream ticket would be? Him and Vivek. To fresh start. Maybe, and I really believe in the U.S. political system, I think it's the best we came up with, but it needs reform. Maybe instead of one president and a vice president, there should be two presidents. Why not? The troubles, the issues we have to deal now are so complex. Maybe we should have three. In a sense that a decision that three men or women or two have to agree. Three maybe is the best, because Trinity. So it's almost impossible to get three people to agree on the same thing, especially if they come from different areas. So they would have to work out their ideas and actually concur. So if one doesn't want to go to war and the other one wants, don't go. And if you see tribes, some current tribes, they have that kind of council of the elders. And we don't actually pick our politicians by that standard, but in a sense, we should vote better. It's a shame what I think Santos, the congressman, was expelled. Not sure if I read that correctly, but it was supposed to be today. And it's a shame that a Brazilian that got to that point was expelled. But you know what? He actually hacked one important thing. Both Democrats and Republicans, they don't really care who is winning. They just want to share, oh, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, I vote for you. He was actually able to create, through lies, all the personas that people want to hear. He could have done that in a more elegant way, and that's what politicians do in a general election, especially for like governor or senator. You need to be in the middle. But he realized one thing. You don't really care. You don't really care if they are capable. If your senator is capable, if your congressman is capable, women, you just want to make sure they have the right flag. So now, the poll says they're going to be Trump or Biden, if Biden is a candidate. Do we really care? Why not? An RFK, Vivek, DeSantis from Florida. So why can we build upon a system that has worked for the best of the last 2 centuries, but improve? The American dream, it's amazing. It pains me to see what's happening now. Only crazy people will destroy their own house. As an immigrant, someone who moved to the US, our vision is so different. I love Patrick, PDB, and is the same thing. He was born in Iran. So we understand that even the worst part of the US is so much better than a lot of places. And I don't say that to minimize the suffer of some communities in the US. We should all raise the standards. But we shouldn't be so fast in saying that evil, evil, evil. Yes, the US did some horrible things, even very recent, in wars and supporting terrorism. Remember, Osama bin Laden was supported by the CIA. So, the president who dropped the bomb had a say. The buck stops with me in the resolute task, because he did. And it was such a controversy in the end of the 40s for what happened, because again, the world saw the destruction. And we should remind that too every day. But you know, when Kennedy took over, and with that speech that talked about the military complex, the Bay of Pigs was the first thing. They tricked the president. It was a chaos. It was a fiasco. 2 years later, we almost didn't wake up. I've read so much about that. And on that day that they signed on the book, I think it was Robert Kennedy who wrote 13 Days. When you see that his chief of staff is at home and they woke up. And when you wake up, this says a lot about it. So governments do make a difference. I don't like injustice and death, but every day we wake up. It says something about our humanity. And I don't want to be anyone, either in Israel or in Palestine today, because they don't know if they're going to wake up. How bad can that be to humans? What makes us care for animals and not for humans? There's something wrong sometimes with us. So we need to pour our heart on our faces. Put it out. Look at that pictures. Look at the dead babies. Look at, they film it. It wasn't like they film it. That's bizarre. We all should have nightmares. But I don't want my daughter to ever see that. So I saw some. And it can never be the same. And I'm not taking lightly the suffering on the other side. So, international community, where were you when they were building those rockets? What do you think would happen? So, if we don't interfere anymore and we don't want a regime change, why are we giving money to terrorists that now live in Qatar, in Doha? They're billionaires. A true leader, a true king, a true warrior is there with their people fighting if they believe in that fight, but they don't. I don't even think they believe in the lie of the virgins. They just tell the lies. They're like in 5-star hotels. They're not being bombed every day. But they know the bombs every day, the desperation is the best fuel for the hate, for the lies they tell. That's the story. That's the freaking narrative. Nothing else. This is the narrative. There's one side that is right, and there's another side that is wrong. And the Palestinians are just in the middle. I don't even know who's behind Hamas. I don't know if it's economic histories, interest, if whatever. You know, the whole geopolitical, let's make sure the Arabs keep fighting to each other so they don't get out of the Stone Age again. Because Iran in the 60s and the 70s was becoming a powerful nation and we couldn't allow it. Britain didn't want it, France, the US. So the CIA, I mean, that's a very known fact, created that coup. You know, took the Shah, put that people there, we're going to control. And that's the history. We keep putting a monster to control the sheep. And they eat the sheep. And then we're like, oh, what happened? History needs to teach us a lesson. We should have a reconciliation. I lived in Washington, D.C. for about 6 months, 8 months. I was working at the Organization of American States. I had gone to Arlington Cemetery, and I've done that a couple of times. It's a very solemn place. You know, they did that as a trick to the Conference Judge General. That was like actually a farm, beautiful farm, the house that looks into the Potomac, beautiful, and they make a cemetery. But at the same time, seeing those stones, and you see some Star of Davids together, I don't want our kids to die. But that's a reminder of the cost of freedom. And it's a shame for all those presidents that took our kids to endless wars. From Vietnam to recent. They're not pawns. They're humans. They believe in that flag. I've never met a veteran that came back the same. But they believe in an ideal. And the ones I talk about Vietnam were the worst. Because I guess people were traumatized about World War II. They saw a lot of things. But there's a purpose. You were fighting for something. And after that, we took that same valor and threw it to the trash. I mean, it's not simple to kill another man. We are not made for that. So the military had to develop ways of training and desensitizing soldiers more and more, because then it's just a video game. But they never come back. I mean, the sniper, American sniper, that story is a real story. And you see the struggle. How can you come back from that you're like almost being killed every day, to your house, to a normal suburb? But those men and women gave the ultimate sacrifice. I went to Gettysburg. I love that speech. The Gettysburg Address. Such a small, concise. I wish I was concise. If I had that's a Lincoln phrase. If I had the eternity, I would be concise. But he was able. He was able to heal a nation. And right after he was killed. 1863, 1963, another president. America has gone through a lot of traumas. But the important thing is that we can always prevail, because the freedom, that is also a virus, but it's a good one. In 1776, the founding fathers threw to the winds a different ideal. Let's not call it a virus, because a virus is a bad thing, but in the sense that it exploded. It's kind of a fire in the hearts of men. Because it says that we are created equal. Equal, and we were given rights by God. A nation that is the most powerful nation today was founded under the principles of God. A lot of Jewish families helped build the U.S. The biggest mistake Hitler did was to try to kill the Jews. They held the knowledge. The atomic bomb. Thank God they fled to the U.S. But in essence, and in closing, I hope this is just a start of a reflection to the entire world. Wars are no longer a political or economic tool. It was for centuries, for millennia, until 1945, because the cost of war now outweighs any gain, any potential gains. Proxy wars, direct wars, individual wars, doesn't matter. We are reaching a point that a nuclear war, a chemical, biological, or even cyber threats could destroy and disrupt civilization. A simple attack on our electric grids all over the world, in 10 days, the world will be destroyed because we don't even know how to hunt anymore. We don't know how to eat. We go to the supermarket. Where does that food come from? They're friends of mine. I think that the chicken arrives like in fillets. They've never been to a farm. Value the farmers. Here, there, everywhere. The Netherlands. You're killing your farmers. You don't need energy. You can survive with fire, but you need food. Look, we need food and water. We don't need computers. Computers make our lives better. Cars. But we need energy in a sense that food is energy. More energy, more prosperity. I say energy, electricity and everything. We have cars and everything. So we need to provide. The countries that have more energy per capita and cheaper have more prosperity. People that are worried about eating, they're not going to care about the environment. And that's very clear on the data. So let's start a real conversation. Let's not have peers, that kind of people anymore. And we need to find a solution. And I don't know, but we will. Together. The people of the world. And now, the Tower of Babel is gone. Soon we're going to be able to chat and understand each other in the same language. But we need to do something good with that. We need to seek justice. We need to seek improvement of lives. So first battle is not let Musk or Twitter die. Because we need alternative to be able to communicate, to be able to post the lies, even the lies. Because we can always put more truth. As they would say, a lie is like if you throw like blood or like a paint in a clean water. You can't take it out. You need to put more water and more until that lie vanish. So if you really believe in racism and white supremacy, that the Jews were wrong and that Nazis were right, whatever conspiracy theory you believe, let's have a conversation. I don't believe you're an evil person. I believe you're just mistaken. And we can love you, but we cannot agree with you. We all have a piece of that puzzle. And the puzzle is big. We need everyone in the world if we want to get out of this mess. Global warming, natural disasters. We only think of hate. We only talk about hate, wars. Maybe even the nature doesn't want to purge us out of the here, because we're like locusts fighting with each other. We need to take advantage of nature. In Genesis, God gave us the earth to care. We're like landlords. Like, we need to take care of it. So we shouldn't overfish, but we should fish. We shouldn't mistreat animals, but we're supposed to eat it. If we're able to create in labs like meat that is generated by in a reactor, maybe that's the way we're going to be able to eat the steak without the impact. I don't think we need to eat bugs. We can serve to birds. They eat bugs. Snakes eat bugs. But that's kind of a weird thing. And I don't think the people that are asking us to eat bugs are going to stop eating their foie gras. So join us in this conversation, because this will take the entire village, and it's not going to be easy. Good things never is. Good things never are easy. And you know what? Deep inside, we all know we're going to the wrong path. I had so many instances in my life that I could have taken the easy way. And I didn't. I suffered a lot, got crushed. But never had to take the easy way. I never believed I needed it. And life threw me a lot of curveballs. Literally being tried all the time. But I do have today a very clean conscience. I'm not perfect. I have great ideas. Some of them don't work, but some of them do. And I'm going to focus on the ones that do. And not only that, but together we'll have so many good projects that will impact positively the entire world. And with people like Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, other tech, like I wish Steve Jobs was here, but I can't say much about the other, I don't know, maybe there are other people, but we need to have more of that spirit that humans are more important than machines. We should never be afraid of AI. We have to embrace it. AI never gonna be a god. We're so small. We're in this game. Even Elon Musk says that we might be in a simulation. If we are in a simulation, let's say God created this and we're here for some reason, we cannot create him. We don't fully comprehend what God is. But AI today is just kind of proxy of God. And as everything that can be used for good or for evil. But essentially, think of this. We, humans, have limited access to knowledge. Therefore, our decisions are a lot of times wrong because we don't take into consideration everything. But the problem with AI, and the question that AI is never going to be an omniscient God, is because we program them. So we don't understand the creator. So in the idea behind, in the same token, the God or this entity creator has all the knowledge. Has all the knowledge of the universe. The AI is never going to have that. AI is also bound by time. Einstein said it. Time is a variable. So AI is going to be bound by time. God is. There's no such a thing as past, future, or present. He just is. He actually created time. So we're bound by a variable that we can never recreate, something that's beyond our comprehension. But we can try. I'm sure he thought about that. Everything that we create came from somewhere. We are children of God, and we're supposed to have that spark as long as we understand and we reach that place of love and comprehension. And I understand we're far from that, but eventually we will. So let's embrace change. Let's embrace technology. But let's gear that to only one thing, to the benefit of humans. Being them Muslims, Jews, Christians, atheists, Buddhists, whatever. That's the reason we are here. We're brothers. In essence, the Israeli conflict is a family conflict. It's brothers fighting with each other. And some way or another we have Arab blood in our DNA, Jewish blood. My last name is Amorim. Amorim. Apparently, it was a Jewish name at some point. So you know what? I actually should wear the Star of David, because for those Nazis, any Jewish blood, maybe even small, makes me Jew. And during the World War II, I would have been killed if they had the DNA back then. So we all should care for this. I had to say all of this. I had to start. And believe me, I've been thinking about this for decades. And everything that I've did brought me here, even the bad things. And I believe the projects is just a tool. In the end of the day, I just want to make sure my daughter is okay, my wife is okay. It's simple. We shouldn't really worry about so many things. We create our own worries. We should embrace the time of history and bring back that ideal of Israel. And I'm using that name because God said that, but that's for all. It's not about the country in the Middle East. It's about the idea of uniting the America, the American freedoms, with that of a promise of God in a land of the brave, land of opportunity, but that not only in the United States of America, the country, but all over the world. Because essentially, people are not going to migrate to the US or all the crazy things that are happening if they're safe and economically sound in their own countries. So, welcome to the new world. A world that we're going to build one brick at a time for the next, who knows, many years. Maybe one of our descendants will live in that ideal world. Some call heaven, the promised land. But deep inside, we all feel that we need that. And we can, because the promise it was already given and is an eternal promise. So let's envision a Middle East that is united, that ingenuity from both sides can coexist. Christians, Muslim, Jews coexisting. And we all should believe in God. And we all do. Forget the differences, the nuances. We all can disagree on kosher food, halal meat. They agree on that, but we don't follow. What comes out of the mouth is even worse. Curses or the hate. We all need to do a cleanseness, like clean the heart. God says He would circumcise the heart, meaning take that evil. Maybe because we are fallen angels, so we're pissed at God until today, thousands of years later. So let's clean here. And it's hard, man. I'm doing that for a couple of probably at least a decade. And it's still dirty. But we'll get there. The images of suffering put pauses. And we need to bring back the humanity. And I'll link those videos because I believe we need to start listening more. Putting ourselves in their shoes. Understanding what would take a man or woman to hate so much another group that they're okay with that barbarity. That they're okay with other Muslims being killed in Yemen, in Syria, elsewhere, but for some reason not in Gaza or West Bank. They're okay with negotiating with terrorists, but then they don't fulfill their promise. Yasser Arafat, all the different things that happened in the past. So there shouldn't be a different standard to Israel. And one last thing, and I'll close. Wars are not pretty. I don't understand. There's no clean war. We may be so detached from reality, thinking that it's just a movie, not a war movie, but the trauma of war. And I invite you, go talk to a veteran. Go really hear he or her stories. The horrors of war are never going to vanish from your mind. Thank God, and I hope I never have to fight in one. But I see those pictures and I always talk to those veterans because I wanted to understand. There's a saying in the military that, or this is even older, like generals, real soldiers don't like wars. They fight, they win, they're proud, but they don't enjoy. Just the sick enjoy. And that has been the truth throughout history. And let's think about this. Because wars are never going to be pretty. People are going to die. The innocent. And you know what? Maybe one of those people are your kid, your wife, your parents. Or maybe it's going to be a man or a woman that's going to bring the world a new technology. Maybe we're killing our future by killing those babies. Because one of those Israeli babies or one of the Palestinian babies could grow up to, I don't know, give us the right solution, cure cancer. That's the most wasted resource we have in the world, because the same we have in Brazil. The people. The people don't have a future. They don't have the belief of a future. They're in slums. They're like drug traffickers. They die at 15, at 20. Those people could have a different ending. So China, no fentanyl. That's not the right path. I understand. Some people think you guys are the Red Army in the Bible, and, well, you call yourself the Red Army. But jokes aside, a world where all of us bring our minds together. And I've been to China a couple of times. Ancient China was a powerhouse. Hard to agree on things, but the Industrial Revolution should have happened in China. Powder, technology, so many things happened there before. But now, President Xi Jinping, it's time to look into China's history. Mao, it was the wrong thing. But there's so much pride, so much wisdom. We all quote Lao Tzu, or also the art of war. And we should start looking at each other in a different way, but we understand that we don't see things in the same way. China doesn't see the West in the same way. We don't want to compete. We don't play by the same rules. And that's a problem when it comes to economics. But you know what? There's no way out. We need to stay, and we need to find solutions to coexist. And we should be able to compete economically. And if we actually collaborate, you see that China became what it is today because of the decades of competition but cooperation. And in the West, the US took the end side of the stick. Even though the companies grew, the market was not properly vetted. So a lot of companies that grew in China, they were protected. So it wasn't a good deal for the West. But, you know, we shouldn't really be in the same way as in the Israeli conflict. We need to stop and say, okay, this was good, this was bad, this was average, this was horrible. Let's think in the future. So let's not use the same rules, the same formula for something that was wrong, that didn't get a good result. Einstein said that the mindset that's going to solve the problem cannot be the same one that created. Back in 1963, Kennedy had actually read a book about World War I. It's called The Guns of August. How the military from both sides, thinking that they understood the other side, created that disaster. Based on what we have records, he used that concept during the missile crisis. 13 days that every single human being in the planet should know about. Because that is the moment, November of 1963, October, that we almost didn't wake up the next day. Short after that, President Kennedy was killed. His nephew, Robert F. Kennedy, seemed like a kook. I took the word from people that I believed. But I went to dig in. And maybe he didn't do a good PR when he was presenting the arguments, but his arguments are sound. The data protects him. Everything we were told they had, he sued, and they said, sorry. NIH said, no, don't have it. But they told everybody. So we shouldn't be okay with lies, especially when it costs so much. And no argument of we're trying to not create panic. You create a lot of panic. And it pains to me to say that some of those Republicans that I also fell for the narrative were right. Because there was no science. They had access. And it's like Guns of August. It's just like a series of mishappening and misreading the other side. And I don't know if Dr. Fauci or all those people in the White House or even around NIH, FDA, they were doing that on purpose, on evil intent, or that was just like kind of a let's try to do this as a small scientific community, and we believe that they had to cut and silence dissent. But that's not science. So I have a problem with we not letting this go, but at the same time, if we don't investigate, but not, I mean, we have to do it with that mind, like what the doctor said, that we need to know why the patient died, but we shouldn't kill the patient. So if there was corruption, if Fauci knew and the wrong incentives are there, and clearly that's one thing that Robert F. Kennedy did very well. He presented the argument and nobody really wants to hear. That's why they killed him, at least in metaphorically, because the wrong incentives. So capitalism is a perfect system. It's not a perfect system, but it's good if the incentives are correctly. So if you have the wolf guarding the sheep, that's not going to work. That's ancient wisdom. So you need to have a dog, watchdog, guarding the sheep so that the wolf doesn't get the sheep. So the very cozy relationship between regulators, market leaders, are never a good idea. That's the whole point of having a regulatory body, is that it would be a body that would look at the problem ethically and technically. So industries are not good to regulate itself because the incentives are wrong, because a company wants to maximize profit, and that sometimes gets into the whole safety issue. We had this huge lawsuit, I think oxycodone, whatever the name of the drug is, a couple billions, it's all there. Why should we believe now if it just happened? So, if you lied to us once, shame on you. But if you keep lying to us and we take it, shame on us. Let's take responsibility for our actions, for our votes, for every time we didn't have a conversation around politics, religion, so that we can always get those ideas and create something better. There are so many religions, why don't we each follow ours? That's the spirit behind the US, freedom of religion, freedom of worship. If you want to believe in Mother Earth, good, don't impose that on me. If I want to believe in God, fine, I'm not going to impose on you. That's it. That's the basics of the foundation of the US. I have a right as an individual, but I have a right as a community, and that's a balancing act. So it's a process that we need to be doing. It's not something that is finished. Democracy is just one generation away of vanishing. I don't believe kings are good because they have their own incentives too. And politicians, just like baby diapers, have to be changed often. But at the same time, what people criticize of the deep state is just that structure doesn't change often. So either we need to change the incentives under the bureaucracy behind, because essentially in Brazil, in Argentina, in Europe, or in the US, that's really the government. Presidents have power, Congress have, but that doesn't change much. So we have technology. We don't even need representatives. We need people that understand what they're talking about. You know, it is preposterous that we have representatives, it is all over the world, that know absolutely nothing about like tax code or science or whatever, and they're the ones deciding the laws. The American political structure, the Senate, the Congress, the executive branch, there was a time that, remember, not a lot of people could become a politician or be voted to. You have to, there were restrictions. Now everyone can, and that's a good thing. But now we need to make sure, you wouldn't hire a CEO that knows absolutely nothing about your company. So that system, that presidential democracy, it's outdated. We need to find different ways, because what happens with the election in the US, for example, the whole idea behind the electoral college is really to balance. But to become a candidate in the US, you're, from the start, had to be crazy. It's such a terrible ordeal. So a lot of the good people don't even want to be in politics. So what we end up with, people that couldn't do anything in the private sector become lifelong politicians. So is the solution to have term limits? I don't know. Because also someone that understands the system is good to have. So it's something in the middle. I like the ideas of Vivek. I would never think I would like a Republican in the sense that what I see it now, and even he has some ideas that I don't concur. But why can we have a system where we could get the best of both worlds? Maybe someone like Robert F. Kennedy, Ron DeSantis, Vivek. I don't know all the candidates, but those are the three that comes to my mind. Trump, great communicator. Why don't we have all the four of them as U.S. presidents, or we change the name, something like that? Because think of it, we have two young guys, DeSantis, very good in policy, Vivek, Robert F. Kennedy, an amazing lawyer, that different take in the world, Trump, that has that fanfare and ability to galvanize people, just like Bolsonaro in Brazil. You know, like honestly, in Brazil, I would love to have President Bolsonaro with President Lula, and they, in a way, they could, each one had to agree, and maybe we'll have a better country. It's amazing how much Bolsonaro can galvanize the people, and they really believe in him. At the same time, the ability that Lula has in selling a lie, I mean, economically and politically, it's just a lie, but he's able. And that's very powerful. So if they were together, Brazil would be exploding in a good way. Not with 40 billions in debt now. Last year we had excess. We have a positive balance. So let's think about this. Wars are ugly. They're not to be fattened with. People die, and it's not pretty. Let's not forget that. And I would invite you, if you can, if you have the stomach, to see the images that Hamas did during the massacre. But don't hate them, like Israelis, a lot of Israelis are doing now. Let's take the approach of the doctor. Let's understand where humanity wronged them. And it didn't start today. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start in 48. Desperation, poverty has always been the fuel for evil. And that's the real enemy. The enemy is not Hamas. It's not Hezbollah. It's hate. It's evil. Let's end evil. And that's the promise that God gave us. That eventually the serpent will die. Whatever that means. And a lot of good people will die in the middle during this process. And that's sad. And there's no need for any more kid to die, to suffer. Not today. Not on our watch. Have a good evening. And may God bless us all. A moment of silence to all the people that will not wake up tomorrow. Even the terrorists, especially the terrorists. Where they're going is not a good place. And we need to have compassion. But we need to change that. And may God, the truth, set us all free.